All right, Shalom Akim. I want to begin by giving all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, double honors to our teachers, the apostles of Great Millstone, the men who the Heavenly Father set up to push His word, and continually and diligently feed the flock, and to you sincere brethren doing likewise, all right, enduring in His work. Shalom. Now we're going to just go right into the scripture. This is Romans 8 and 5. For they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the spirit, the things of the spirit. And basically, this is a distinction the Apostle Paul is making because you got two different extremes, and there's no in between. All right, either you carnal or of the spirit. And the men really starting here at Great Millstone is of the spirit, and everybody outside of this um, fold is basically carnal. All right, we're gonna read on. Verse 6, for to be carnally minded is death. And that's true because the scriptures tell you that only elect number, a righteous number of men is going to escape the perils to come. We're not going to taste death. We're not going to taste that second death, which is the nuclear missiles. Because when you read in the scriptures, the first death was the flood, all right, back with Noah, when the world was cleansed through water. All right, the second death will be by way of fire, and nuclear fire to be in particular, which is going to cleanse the world for good this time, all right, from all the filthiness that the so-called white man has sold here on the planet. That's going to have to be cleansed by fire. But you're going to have a group of men who are spiritual that's going to escape that. They're not going to taste death because you got some people who believe that everybody's going to die. And that would make a lot of you niggas proud because you feel like, well, at the end of the day, we all going to die. But that's not the case. Pursuing the 1 Corinthians 15th chapter, where Paul said, I show you a mystery, we will not all sleep. And the all who is not going to sleep is those of the spirit. And the scripture is breaking that down, all right? Read verse 6 again. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. So unless you're of the spirit, then you're going to be put to death. There's no in between, all right? This the Apostle Paul breaking down two extremes. Either you carnal or you spiritual. And only the spiritual man is going to receive the spirit and the things of the spirit. For instance, some examples are reincarnation. You got to be spiritual to be able to see that. All right, reincarnation. To see that the white man is the devil, which really shouldn't be such a hard thing, but that's the way it is. All right, you got some people that don't believe after all the track record this so-called white man and all the evidence this so-called white man laid out. You got some of our people in particular that still can't see the fact that that's the devil that the Bible speaks of, thus making them carnal. All right, so them are just a few among many examples that we the Israelites, that Cornelius is an Israelite. All right, the Ethiopian that Philip encountered was an Israelite. You got to be spiritual to see these things. You know, the parables of the scriptures. There's certain parables that the spirit got to rest on you for you to be able to go and break them down. All right, so either the spirit is on you or it's not. If you're not spiritual and you're carnal, that means you're gonna be put to death. There's no way around it. All right, verse 6 again. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Verse 7. Because the carnal mind is enmity with against Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai. All right, for it is not subject to the law of Yahweh, neither indeed can be. So that's the whole point of this sitting. And that's what I'm going to name this video, all right? Because the carnal mind is enmity against the Most High, all right? Which basically means enemies. You are not in harmony. You are not in agreement with the Most High. So when you carnal, that means nothing good can come of you, man. You got to be spiritual to receive salvation. And when you come into this thing, particular Great Millstone, you better be spiritual. You got to be spiritual unless you're going to be spewed out. Because the things that offend most of these men, all right, when you look at the different scoffers, all right, ain't no even need to mention them by name, we already know who they are. Mainly, they get offended or they get rejected from this thing because they're not spiritual. They carnal men. And that's the same with a lot of guys throughout these camps who come in for a minute, then they lose their edge, so to speak, and they go back out into the world. That's because they was carnal the whole time, proving that they're enemy of the Most High. You know, because oil and water don't mix like in the world. This thing, you can't fake it in this thing, man. And if you're not spiritual, you're not gonna make it in this thing, man. All right, verse 8. So then they that are in the flesh cannot please the Most High. So what that basically means, because we all in the flesh, but what that basically means is being of the flesh. All right, when you carnal, you can't see it in a spiritual sense. That means you can't please the Most High, man. Because you got some guys that want to establish their own salvation. All right, they might be like, look, I need to make sure I got my house in order or whatever the case might be, and they take that carnal route. All right, in oppose of just letting Yahweh Shai deal with it. Just do what Yahweh Shai commanded of you. Scripture tell you, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven. But you got some guys that want to do it their way. And that's that carnal mind, all right? Because we all was carnal at one point, all right? In the world, we figured, look, if I want to get this or get that, I'm gonna have to do this or do that, and you lean towards your own understanding, which is carnal. But when you come into this truth, you got to let the things of the world go, man. You got to let Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai deal with it. That's a form of being spiritual, all right? Verse 9, but ye are not in the flesh, but in the spirit. If so, be that the spirit of Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, dwell in you. Now, if any man have not the spirit of Hamashiach, he is none of his. And that's it, man. All right? If you ain't got, if Yahweh Shai spirit ain't resting on you, you're gonna be put to death, period. Because Yahweh Shai is a representation of life. All right? He embodies life. So when you have the spirit of Yahweh Shai resting on you, you're not going to be put to death, all right? And you got different people who cannot come into this thing because of that very fact. They carnal. Yahweh Shai did not bestow that oil on them, man. That oil of understanding to see things in a spiritual light. And that, in his examples, we're going to get examples of that, all right? Because that actually happened, all right, even with Yahweh Shai, all right? Now this is John 6:53. Then Yahweh Shai said unto them, verily, verily, I say unto you, except ye eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, ye have no life in you. Whosoever eateth my flesh and drinketh my blood have eternal life, and I will raise him up at the last day. And that's reincarnation if you can receive it. All right. If you spiritual, you will see that clear. All right. For my flesh is meat indeed, and my blood is drink indeed. He that eateth my flesh and drinketh my blood dwelleth in me, and I in him. All right. Verse 57, as the living Father hath sent me, and I live by the Father, so he that eateth me, even he shall live by me. This is the bread which came down from heaven, not as your fathers did eat manna, and are dead. He that eateth of this bread shall live forever. These things he said in the synagogue as he taught in Capernaum. Now here's the point, verse 60. Many therefore of his disciples, when they heard this, said, this is an hard saying, who can hear it? When Yahweh Shai knew in himself that his disciples murmured at it, he said unto them, doeth this offend you? All right, so basically, the thing that separated them from Yahweh Shai was they was carnal. They was thinking that Yahweh Shai was talking about cannibalism. They didn't have the spirit. All right, clearly Yahweh Shai was not saying you're going to physically eat his body and drink his blood. But by them being carnal, they became enemies with Yahweh Shai. That set a separation with them and Yahweh Shai. Because the very words Yahweh Shai said, he said, do this offend you? Because it did offend them. And that's what you see today, all right? A person who you might conversate with and you try to break something down, they ain't looking at it spiritual. All right, they uh, looking at it from a carnal outlook.